So the important criteria here is that both the sides agree on one representation, then one external representation, transmit in the sender's format along with an indication of the format used, which format is being used from the center side. That is also sent to a network. The receiver will convert the same thing to its form. That means its form means the form which can be understood by itself. Okay, so who will like do this task? That is, this particular task is done by middleware. How middleware will do that? Using these two processing things, one is marshalling and unmarshalling. Okay, external data representation. The agreed standard for the representation of data structures and primitive values is called external data representation. The agreed, this particular standard is agreed by everyone in the network. Okay, this particular representation. What is marshalling? Marshalling is a process of taking a collection of data items, okay, and assembling them into a form which is suitable for transmission in a message. So there is particular form. The marshalling process will collect all the data items and assemble them. They just assemble them to a format that can be agreed here, like that is agreed in the network, that particular format. Okay, so the marshalling consists of translation of structured data items and primitive values to into one representation, that is external representation. Unmarshalling is just the reverse of marshalling, the deassembling. Whatever the things is, it has been assembled and it has been converted into a standard form is deassembled. Okay, once it is arrived in a receiver process, and the reassembled things are converted to a form which can be understood by the destination. Okay, unmarshalling consists of generation of primitive values from their external representation and the rebuilding of the data structure. So whatever the data structures here means the language or whatever the way the data is being stored. Okay, that is referred as the data structures. Everything will be initially it will be in one form, that is marshaled, and it is converted into a form that is agreed in the network, and later it will be received at the destination side and it is deassembled, which is called as unmarshalling, and it will be converted reassembled and it like converted into a form that can be understood by the destination. This is the process of marshalling and unmarshalling. Okay, so any doubts here? So external representation, if it is asked like in the exam, you need to explain about external data representation, what is external data representation, and you need to mention about marshalling and unmarshalling. And you need to tell that everything, this marshalling and unmarshalling are intent to be carried out by whom? By middleware layer. Okay, this is about external data representation. So this one example you can see, like what are interoperability. Here, this is a binary form of a uh, 3. If it is considered to be in represented in some form, it is binary representation of 3. Okay, you can see this binary form. In Little Indian approach, how this particular thing is represented, the least significant bit will be there in the front or the in the beginning or at the end. In Little Indian approach, the least significant bit, Little Indian approach. You can see here this is a this is the same thing as this which is represented in Little Indian approach. Whether it a list insignificant bit is in the beginning or at the end should be active. See, roll number 23 from B section. S absent. Roll number 40 from A section. 40. Absent. See, you will be marked absent. Definitely don't argue for it. Like again, 23 from B section, 40 from A section, then 53 from A section.
Hello.
Yeah. It is?
Yes, ma'am. Did you say 53?
Yes, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So can you see the representation here? The bit representation?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. In Little Indian approach, like what is the difference here with the Little Indian approach and Big Indian approach?
Ma'am, while writing the Little Indian approach, we take the lowest bit of the data in the lowest bit of the new data. Means the lowest bit of the
Lowest bit.
old data will
Yeah. In the
occupy the lowest bit, least significant bit
beginning
in the
or
new
end?
data.
Beginning or end that you tell? Beginning of Little Indian approach or end of the Little Indian approach?
That means it will occupy the least significant.
Hmm. Yes. Okay, so you can see the difference here in the Little Indian approach and Big Indian approach. So what middleware does? Okay, fine. What middleware does is will convert this. This is the original data. It is in your system only. It is represented in. If it is represented in Little Indian approach, it will be represented like this. Will be converted into a some form that can be understood by the destination or external systems. Okay, once it reaches the destination, this thing again from the external representation, if that system is following the Big Indian approach, that will be converted like this, so that this will be understood. The same thing can be now the new system will understand this particular bit as 3, this as 3 if it is following Big Indian approach. This is the Little Indian approach followed by the original system, and this is the Big Indian approach, which can be understood by the destination system. Okay, the middleware does this task so that this will be properly communicated to the destination. Okay, that is interoperability. Just for your example, I've put this. Okay, so three approaches for external data representation is used normally. One is CORBAS CDR data representation, one is Java and .NET remote object serialization, and one is XML. All of these will be discussed. Okay, so CORBAS CDR, this particular external data representation approach is used to transfer the data. This mainly concentrate with the primitive types like data types. Okay, the external representation of the data types. This particular approach mainly concerned with that data types, integer, sequence, or all those, like all those that primitive data types. How to manage that with the external representation is concerned by this particular representation. Okay, this is CORBAS CDR is used by many of the programming languages. They use this for the external representation for the data types. Okay, and next one is Java and .NET remote object serialization. This particular thing is platform specific. Okay, it is used only by the Java to make sure that whatever it has been written in Java can be understood by other systems in the network. Okay, which is concerned with the flattening and external data representation of any single object or tree of objects that may need to be transferred. Any single object or tree of objects that maybe need to be transmitted in a message stored on a disk. It is used only by the Java. And another one is XML. So XML is textual format, okay, extensible markup language, which is more interoperable. See, these two, when you convert anything to the external representation using these two approaches, will convert everything into binary form. Okay, everything will be converted to binary form with this CORBAS also, with Java also. Here this will convert the data into textual format. That is one difference. Because of that, it is more interoperable. Okay, these three approaches for external data representation. Okay, so COBAS common data representation requires interface definition, IDL. So this I'll not explain again and again because you know what is IDL by now. So both sides have the interface definition language. It should have the CORBAS common data representation. Java serialization to marshal and unmarshal to a network or to storage, there is no interface definition language is used. In CORBAS common data representation, both the sides interface definition language is used. Java serialization does not use interface definition language. In case of XML, XSDL, and or WSDL may access interface definition languages. Okay. So this I have put a paragraph about Corba, what it is, how it is found, like how it is used and all. You can go through it. From the object management group around since late 80s, they have come up with the concept like this one, Corba. OMG in International Open Membership, not-for-profit technology standards group have come up this. The Corba effort was all about distributed objects on heterogeneous platforms. It does a lot of things, but central is in the idea is passing around the objects by value and reference objects. So this is the main thing. Corba 2.0 uses CDR to represent all the data types. This is what I was telling about, is concerned only with the data types that may be passed as arguments to or return values from a method. So that is also important. So data types is very important for external data representation. Okay, so that Liscoba is concerned about all these things. How one example can give for representation of the common representation, the sequence in Corba representation will be length followed by elements in order. So if you consider any sequence 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, what is the length? 6. In Corba, it will be represented like this. 6 is the length of the sequence and the data elements in the order. Okay. Then string, type string, again same thing, length followed by characters. If it is A, B, C, its length is 3. 3 followed by the characters. Okay. Array elements in order. So if you declare something as an array, that will be represented like array only, because the length of the array is fixed. Okay, no need to specify its length. If it is struct, data type is struct, in the order of declaration of the component. So every struct will have its own declaration, some variables declared inside it. This in the same order it will be stored. Okay, if it has integer, then 6, the length of the integers, sorry, if it is a sequence, the length of the sequence, then the sequence. If it is string, the length of the string, then the string. So that is how the struct has been represented. If it is enumerated data type, unsigned long, the values are specified by the order. It's the same like struct, how it is specified, same like struct, enumerated is also specified. Union, these three are like same. So type tag followed by a selected member. Okay, can be used by variety of programming. Like this representation is used by many of the programming representation. The data is represented in binary form. In Corba, the data is represented in binary form. Values are transmitted in sender's byte ordering, which is specified in each message. Okay. See one example you can see here. See, this is the example for struct with value. So this is the representation in the original program. Okay, for the external data representation, how it is encoded. Okay, with Corba as a representation, struct with value Smith, London, both are string, and an integer 1984. Okay, so here you can see index in sequence of bytes, and every bytes here, like the space given here, it is 4 bytes for every this column. Index 0 to 3 will store the, so since the first value is Smith, it is string. How string needs to be stored? How string needs to be stored? Roll number 26 from A section. 26. $34 B section. $34. 70 from A section. Manasvi.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. How the string
Uh,
need to be stored?
the length followed by the characters.
Yes. Length of the string is 5, right? So 5 will be stored in initial 4 bytes of data. Then next you have Smith, the data, SMIT. Why SMIT? It can store only the 4 bytes of data here, 4 to 7 till from 4 till 7. So SMIT. Okay, then H will come to the next index part, H and the space. Okay, then length of the string. Okay, fine, Manasvi. London 6 and LOND, and in the next 2 here you have ON. Okay, stop there. Then integer unsigned long, so 1984. This is how the CORBA represent data for the external representation. Okay, so marshalling in CORBA. So this is the data is passed, that is struct person, string name, string place, long year. CORBA's interface compiler. You know, CORBA requires both the sides interface definition language and it needs a compiler. So once it is fed into the interface compiler, it automatically generates some of the operations that are required for marshalling and unmarshalling task. Okay, so you know now what is marshalling and what is unmarshalling. So that some of the operations are needed to do that. That is automatically generated when the data has been fed into the CORBA's interface compiler. Okay, one can easily include the proxy code and make it. Once it is marshaled, means once it is assembled into the required format, any other methods which is required to apply on the same data can be done easily. Okay, this is about CORBA's representation. Next comes Java serialization. Java serialization, as I told, it is platform specific, used only by the Java for the representation of the data to the external representation. Here, the complete object here, the public class, person, implements are this particular class's object. It is converted to a serial stream, set of like the data which is serial. Okay, so here in one object invokes or it has the reference to some other objects. It is using method from some other object, is referencing something. When you serialize this particular thing, that particular object which is referred by this particular uh, or methods in this class needs to be serialized. Okay, so you have object 1 and within that you are referring some methods from object 2 to something. Okay, so this also needs to be serialized. You are serializing this particular object. Along with that, since it is dependent, each like both of these are dependent, so you need to serialize this also. Okay, how do you serialize this one which is referred by this object? Its handles are being created. Handles means there is a reference to this object here in the serial form. Okay, so that refers to some other class again or some other methods. Okay, so these are called as handles. Reference to an object within the serialized form. This is serialized. Along with that, this also needs to be serialized in such a way that this is referring to some other thing. Okay, so this is called as Java serialization. Here, the entire object is being converted into a serial stream. Okay, by object, you know what it is, what it has. The entire thing needs to be serialized along with the data which is related to that particular object. Some other object which is referencing some other methods that is also dependent on the previous object needs to be serialized in such a way that that will be called as handles, which is reference to that object, some other object that is also serialized. Okay, so any doubt here? Java serialization, the activity of flattening an object or connected set of objects into a serial form. Objects along with the connected set of objects. Okay. Serialization refers to the activity of flattening objects or even the connected set of objects. Yeah, it's the same thing. To make use of Java serialization, some of the calls which is used to serialize class object, to serialize this, you need to call this particular, like you need to create an instance of this particular class object input stream, and you need to invoke write object method, passing the object as an argument to in order to serialize this class object. Okay, object input stream, and you need to invoke write object method passing to the object as an argument. To deserialize in the writer in the destination object output stream and use read object call to construct the original object. So data input stream and read UTF, data output stream and write. This is just for an example. So data input stream may be the object of this particular class, object input stream, and you need to write and read. Okay, these are the methods which is used for Java serialization. Okay, so this is the same thing, the same for the same this value for the same example. Smith London 1934 here is represented using Java serialization representation like this. See, class name, that is person, serial, this is serial data. Okay, person, then version number, 8-bit version number, and type and name of the instance. These are all the instance variable for this first object. This is the instance variable h0, instance variable. Okay, so values of instance variable, so int year, Java, and there is a string. Okay, this int year is for 1934, this data. Okay, so it is one after the other. This is data type int year, this is data type for the second data type for the next data, then 1934 is the data. Since it is unsigned log, same thing like your core bus, nothing is specified. Since it is string, the length of the string is specified, string, length of the string, and this one may be referencing to some object. Okay, instance variable of some other object. It has been created. This is handles. These are all handles. These are all handles. Here one handle is there. Here one handle is there. That is referenced into some other objects. Some other objects. Okay, so this is about serialized form for the external data representation using Java serialization. Okay, and this is platform specific, used only by the Java. Any doubts here till here? Then web service use of XML. XML, I think you know what is like the data representation, XML. So this will be the type of, here everything will be converted to textual form. In previous two approaches, everything will be converted to binary form. Here, this thing, everything will be converted to textual form. Okay, so what are within the tags here, just for your reference, I'm telling you again. So I think XML, you know, what are within this tags are called as elements, and you have attributes here. Attributes means element name is name, attribute person, the value given to the attribute is person. Okay, so here some of the namespaces are also being used. Namespaces are being used, and here document type definitions, many, this is styling, the configuration, everything is used in this. The same format is used for the external data representation. So whatever you type in the origin or in the base system will be converted to XML format, and it will be understood by the external external systems. Then later again it will be converted into the form which can be understood by the destination. Okay, this is XML representation. Okay, all the three. So just for your revision, we'll just go through it. Yeah, external data representation is to make sure that the system, whatever the data is, just tell you in brief so that you have to explore it more in the exam. So external data representation is just to make sure that the complete system, the complete distributed system will understand whatever the message is being transferred. Okay, because the everything will be platform like the base system specific. And every system should understand what has been transmitted over the network. You should be able to understand. For that, external data representation is required because different systems follows different way to represent data. So the task is done by middleware, that is done by marshalling. Middleware will do these two tasks, that is marshalling and unmarshalling. Okay, so marshalling is the process of assembling everything into a form and make sure that it will be transmitted in a particular format that can be understood by the network. And unmarshalling is deassembling everything once it has arrived at the destination, and the destination will be able to understand it properly. Okay, so this task is done by middleware layer. So this is just example I gave for to understand what is interoperability, the different approach used by different system to represent the data integer j equal to 3. Okay, the three approaches used in distributed systems to make sure that external data representation is successful. One is CoreBus CDR, and Java.NET CoreBus mainly is concerned with the primitive data types. Java is just a platform specific, used only by the Java. XML is textual format. Okay, so CoreBus, about CoreBus, this is the data type and how it is represented in CoreBus. It is given in this particular table: length, string, array, struct, how it is represented. Okay, so one example has been discussed, and 5 how it is represented. This is the original data, how it is represented in CoreBus for external data representation. Okay, so interface compiler in CoreBus, which is responsible to make sure that marshalling and unmarshalling will be initiated automatically. Okay, Java serialization platform specific. Here the entire object is converted into a stream, serialized stream, where the data is represented, even the object is represented in a stream of data. Okay, serial stream. Some of the methods, and this is the data format for which is used by Java serialized form. XML, this is a text representation. Here textual, everything will be converted into a textual format. Okay, complete data, the complete details is converted to a textual format. Okay, but in distributed object oriented programming, we need to pass pointers here. Okay, now comes the main concept here in the distributed system is here we don't invoke any method which is present in the client machine or which is present in the local machine. We may have to invoke methods which is present in the remote machine. Okay, how the system will manage that? Okay, that means whatever we invoke, we will just give the reference to that, pointers. We deal only with the pointers in distributed systems. Just pass the reference so that the object or the method which is present, which is referring to the different machines, methods which is present in the different machine needs to be executed, and result is need to be sent back without any interference between them. Okay, we are pointing to objects that live on the heap. In systems such as Java RMI, .NET remoting, we need to pass pointers to remote objects. Okay, so we want X to point to an object living on some distant machine, a remote invocation it is. Wherever you can see here in distributed system, it is remote invocation, not necessary that the object or the methods which is present in the local machine needs to be executed every time. Okay, so this is the representation of a remote object reference. How to invoke this particular remote object? Okay, this is the reference. I mean, this will be the form actually. So first 32 bits internet address will be there. Next 32 bits port number will be there for the distant machines. Next 32 bits time. Next 32 bits object number. Then interface of remote object. Okay, remote object reference is an identifier for a remote object, may be returned by or passed to a remote method in Java remote method invocation. Okay, so this is one example for representation of a reference, object reference. This is how the reference is been sent. Okay, so you need to know one more concept here, multicast communication. Can you give one example for multicast communication? Multicast. What is multicast operation? This is an operation that sends a single message to one process to each of the members of a group of process. The definition is given there. I just want you people to give example. Roll number 50 from B section. 50. Thirty from B section. 30. 30. 30. 25 from A section.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So what is multicast operation?
Ma'am, sending a single message from one process to the other member.
Yeah, that is fine. Example can you give? Multicast. You people know different types of casting, right? Unicast, multicast, broadcast. So what is the difference?
Ma'am, can't think of any right now.
Okay. Roll number 37 from B section. Thirty-seven from A section.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you give example for multicast?
Can it be email sending, ma'am? Like sending to a
Particular group or sending to all?
like sending to a list of people, like
Correct.
Broadcast.
List of people. Broadcast means then broadcast. Difference between multicast and broadcast. Email is correct, multicast. Sending to a list of people, not to all. Broadcast means like your TV, television, broadcasting. One example you can give for multicast communication, which you are using it now.
Microsoft Teams.
Yes, multicast, correct? Because I have organized a meeting with the list of people or set of people, and whatever I'm going to communicate is private to only you. Like it cannot go out of the border, correct? Like video conferencing you do to the set of people. Okay, broadcasting is not like that. It is like a TV, you broadcast everything to everyone, whoever has the connection. But here, if I agree, I can only make sure that I will add that person to a team, make sure that he will also get the, say there will be a teams. Okay, there will be teams, and those people who are in teams are access to can have access to that. Okay, so that is multicast communication. Multicast operation is more appropriate. This is an operation that sends single message to one process to each of the members of a group process. Okay, membership of the group is transparent to the sender. Sender knows who are the members and who he wants to give the access. Okay, the simplest multicast protocol provides no guarantees about message delivery or ordering. So here message delivery is not guaranteed, but sender will make sure that everyone will get the he will multicast everything to everyone, but again message delivery may not be guaranteed, right? Okay, so these four are the characteristics of multicast communication. This we'll discuss at the end, this four. Okay, IP multicast is built on top of the multicasting. Distributed systems also work with this multicast. IP multicast is built on top of the IP protocol. IP multicast allows sender to transmit a single packet to a set of computers that form a group. Okay, the sender is unaware of the identities of the individual recipients or size of the group. A multicast group is specified. So you have four types of address, class A, B, C, D. So multicast group will be occupied, like this is specified by class D internet address. Okay, it is 255.255.255.0. Okay, being a member of this group allows a computer to receive. So if that particular person or the IP is part of this group, that he will be like that system will be able to get the messages from the which is forwarded to the group. Okay, that is IP multicast. The membership of multicast group is dynamic, allowing computers to join or leave at any time. So like your Teams, it is not dynamic. So people can join the group or they can leave the group at any time, or they can, like your video conference or the conference call, you can leave the call anytime. So that option is there. And to join an arbitrary number of groups. It is possible to send datagrams to a multicast group without being a member also sometimes. Okay. At the IP level, the computer belongs to a multicast group when one or more of its processors has sockets that belong to that group. You know the concept of socket connections. Okay. When a multicast message arrives at a computer, copies are forwarded to all of the local sockets. So this, when a message transmitted to a destination is arrived at its destination, if that destination has multiple virtual connection with some other systems, that other systems also will be able to get the messages that have joined the specified multicast address and are bound to the specific port number. Okay, so it's I mean, the socket will have its own connection, will have its address, socket address. That means a combination of IP address and the network. So that is used to have this particular connection will be able to get the same message which is arrived at the destination for that particular machine. Okay. Yeah, same thing. Multicast process uses this type of routers, multicast routers. Address will be class D address. Okay. The failure model here is omission failures. So this has been discussed while the ma'am was discussing about UDP. What is omission failures? Failure model. What is that? 66A section. B section. 56A section.
Excuse me, ma'am.
56, no?
Yes, ma'am. B section. 56.
56B section.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So failure models are like they provide a trade-off between reliability issues and give a responsive nature to the distributive system. So,
That is omission failures, correct. Okay. And okay, fine. Java API, multicast socket. So the method which is used in Java API to join the group and to leave the group. These are all some methods, example methods. Okay. Yeah. So some of the characteristics of multicast is fault tolerance based on replicated services. Okay, a replicated service consists of a group of servers. Client requests are multicast to all the members of the group, each of which performs identical operations. So request will be multicasted to all the members in the group, the client request, and each of will do its own operations. Even when some of the system fails, some of the member fails, the client can still be served because the request is distributed across the members of the group. That is fault tolerance. Discovering services in spontaneous networking. So multicast messages can be used by servers and clients to locate available discovery services in order to register their interfaces or to look up the interfaces of other services in the distributed systems. Okay, so spontaneous networking. So the complete services are clients are able to locate all the services which can be provided from the server side. Okay, then better performance through replicators. So you know already that it has replicated data, so that even though one system fails, other system will be able to serve the requests. So because of that, there will be an increase in the performance through replicated data. Okay, propagation of event notification. If see in your Facebook, someone changes the status of the status, then everyone will be notified. Will be able to get messages. Okay, so that is propagation of any event has been handled, like any event has been occurred, is propagated to all other members in the group. Okay, so whatever the concept which we'll be discussing, it will be in general, and some application, all the applications which is part of distributed systems will be using these concepts. Okay, propagation of event notifications. So this is all about external data representation and about remote object references, multicasting, everything. Okay, any doubt till here? Yes. Just take 5 minutes break. We'll start again. So those who have not answered when I called, so you will definitely not get attendance for today's class. So last class also some of have logged in like after 15 minutes, their attendance have not given. So if you want any time to confirm, you can ask like whether you got attendance for that particular class or not. You can also logged in after 15 minutes of the class starts. Handles, can handles be considered like pointers? Pointers only it is. Okay, Anmol. Anmol? Anmol Malhotra? Yeah. Okay. So handles are pointers. This is reference objects. Okay, you are referring something from other machines. Like object reference. So you use object, with respect to that you have some of the methods, or you use class, inside class you have some of the methods. That method again, it uses some of the methods from some of the public methods from some other class. Okay, you're passing the reference only. It is pointers then. Everything here in distributed systems referencing pointers only. Okay. Yes, for video streaming it is there. Sending message to everyone, only a group of. Okay. Any other doubts? So you need to clarify all your doubts, because this particular subject is supposed to understand also, and supposed to write, explore. Like you can't write in like small sentences, small paragraphs. It is theoretical subjects. You have to explore more to write. start the new chapter. Yes. Start. Anyone, like at least. Am I audible? Yes. The next chapter is for invocation and for distributed objects. So, what do you mean by remote invocation? What is distributed objects? How all these things like remote invocation things are happening in distributed systems? What are the pointers? What are references which has been sent? Everything will be discussed here in this particular chapter. Okay, so this is the layered architecture for distributed systems. You will have your UDP, TCP, underlying interprocess communication primitives. Those are sockets, message passing. So these are layers which are related to middleware layers. Okay. So then you have applications and services which are distributed across which can be distributed across the network. Okay. So what are the types of communication in between two systems which are part of the distributed network? Is client server can be client server communication. It follows different communication patterns which are there, which is discussed already in the previous classes. So here client server communication in distributed systems is referred as request replay communication. Okay, request replay communication. So it is same like client server communication, where client will send the request and server will respond with the reply. Okay, is designed to support the roles and message exchanges in typical client server interactions. If there are interactions which is similar to client server interactions, that time the request reply communication has been used in distributed network. Okay, in the normal case, request reply communication is synchronous because the client process blocks until the reply arrives from the server. So it's synchronous. So there is a synchronous communication between client and server because client will not wait for like the client will not send any other request, or it will block the complete process until it gets the reply from the server. And there are cases that is not required. The client can wait, or client may be down so that it cannot receive any response from the server. That time the communication required is asynchronous communication. So both synchronous communication and asynchronous communication is required in distributed systems. Okay, whenever clients are down, so it is necessary that the client will not get the reply back from the server. Okay, so both type of communication is present in the distributed systems. Okay, in request reply communication. It is this client server communication, that is request reply communication, is built over UDP datagrams, consists of request response pairs, hence no acknowledgements at transport layer are necessary. So request and response. So these two types of communication or message transmission is there in the request reply protocol. Okay, avoidance of connection establishment and communication overhead. This is not there. The connection establishment and communication overhead is not there because they are built over UDP datagrams. Okay, no need for flow control due to small amounts of data. A very small amount of data may be transferred in this particular type of communication, so no need to have that flow control mechanism also. Okay, so the design request reply protocol matches requests to replies. If UDP datagrams are used, the delivery guarantees must be provided by request reply protocol, which maybe use the server reply message as an acknowledgement of the client's request message. So here acknowledgement separately it is not being used. Server client will request and server will respond. The response will be kind of acknowledgement only. Okay. So these are the this is just a scenario which will tell you how request reply protocol works. Okay, these are all the methods which is invoked from the client side. Do operation, that is request message, will be sent to the server. That server will execute this get request to get the request. Okay, select some object, execute that method, and send the reply back to the client. Okay, so that is reply message. You can see request message here and you can see the reply message here. This is request reply protocol. Okay, so three primitives which is used here is do operation, get request, and send reply. Do operation, get request, and send reply. These three primitives are used in request reply protocol. Okay, the do operation primitive syntax is like this: remote object reference O, method ID, and the arguments need to be passed. Okay, sends a request message to the remote object and returns the reply. The arguments specify the remote object, the method to be invoked. So it specifies a remote object, the method needs to be invoked at the server side, and argument to that particular method. Okay, get request looks something like this. Get request acquires the client request via the server port. Then next this one method send reply. Okay, so it will be having the reply, message reply, INET address, that is internet address, port. Yeah, this particular primitive is to send the reply back to the client. Okay, so these three are the primitives used in request reply protocol. Okay, so request reply protocol packet looks something like this. Okay, so initial the information to be transmitted in a request reply or reply message. So this is a message type. If it is request, it will be set to 0. If it is reply, it is set to 1. Then request ID, the ID which is just the integers, like in continuous manner there will be some IDs being allocated to each of the packets, that is request ID. Then object reference to the remote object which is need to be executed at the remote machine. Method ID, which method to execute, so it's method ID. Okay, then arguments to be passed. This is the request reply message structure. Okay, you have message type, whether it is request or reply. If it is request, it is set to 0. If it is reply, set to 1. Then you have request ID, which is just a continuous numbers like integers, one after the other. Every message will have its own ID. Then reference to the object which is need to be that methods need to be executed at the server side. The method ID for that method, and arguments need to be passed. Okay, the first field reply message, second field identifier, third field remote object reference, and the fourth field is method to be invoked. Okay, identifier I have told you, it is just an increasing sequence of integers. Okay, identifier for the sender process, maybe its port or internet address. Then next, failure model of the request reply protocol. So again, the failure model defined for this particular protocol is omission failure, and messages are not guaranteed to be delivered in sender order. Okay, so these are all the types of failures that can occur in request reply protocols. Okay, omission failure, and it does not guarantee that the message is being delivered to the receiver. Okay, So different styles of this request reply protocol. One is just the request R protocol. Then request reply protocol RR protocol. Request reply acknowledge protocol. Request reply acknowledge. As the name indicates here, just the client will send just the request message. And RR protocol, client will send the request message, server will send the reply message. RRE, request is sent from the client, server will send the reply, and acknowledgement is also sent from the client side to make sure that the response has been received. Okay, so what R protocol does is the single request message is sent by the client to the server, single request. Whether it is got respond, fine. Otherwise, it will not send the message. The R protocol may be used when there is no value to be returned from the remote method. Okay, so like making sure, like in client server, like in web browser, you're putting some message to the server just to make some URL change or ID change, method change. Those are all type of R protocol. There is nothing to be returned there, and there is some modification which happens in the server side. Okay, so RR protocol is useful in client server or exchanges because it is based on request. RRA protocol exchanges 3 messages: request, reply, acknowledge. Okay, request reply protocol. Here, examples, like what are some of the example for request reply protocol is HTTP, hypertext transfer protocol, is a request reply protocol for the exchange of network resources between the client, web client, is the web browser, and web servers. Okay, so between the web browsers and the web servers, the message transmission, the request reply protocol, which is HTTP. What are the steps followed in HTTP? Connection establishment between client and server at default server port. Connection establishment is there. Client sends the request. Server sends a reply. Connection closure. These are all the steps followed in HTTP protocol. Okay. So HTTP 1.1, the different versions, which uses persistent connections. Here, now we don't have only the textual data to be transmitted. We have some audio, video, all those text, HTML, image, all these needs to be transmitted. Okay, so this is MIME. What does MIME like? Structures. MIME full form, multi-purpose, internet. What does MIME? What is MIME? Multi-purpose internet mail extensions. Okay, so I've kept it here. Multi-purpose internet mail extensions. It's an internet standard that extends your browser, your email messages to transfer HTML or GIF or JPEG or any video, other types of data. Okay, that is used by HTTP 1.1 version. So some of the methods which is used for HTTP is get, method get. It requests the resource identified by URL as argument. So you will be typing your URL in the browser, your client, that is browser, and which method of HTTP will take that URL, make sure that you will get the contents of that URL in your client machine is this particular method, get method. What it takes as argument is the URL you're going to pass. Okay, and the HTTP version. This is the message structure actually. Method, get, URL, HTTP version, headers, and the body. This is the request message which is sent from your client browser. Client machine's browser is your client machine. Okay, so that method used by your browser is get to send the URL. That is get. Then head. Head is a method which is similar to get, but only the content. It is not that you don't have to access the content of the website. You just need some of the information, some metadata information like date of last modification. From the programmer side, it is dash date or type and the size, all those things. That will be returned if you invoke head method from your client machine. It will just get the metadata information from the server. Okay, post. method of HTTP. It specifies the URL of the resources that can deal with the data. Some data is supplied here with the post, and URL needs to be supplied so that the data which is sent need to be handled by the URL sent. Okay, so that is post. This method is designed to deal with providing block of data to a data handling process, posting messages in bulletin board, mailing list, the mail address, the URL is also been sent along with this. That is post. Okay, some of append operation. Put method, what it does is just to send the identifier for a address. Okay, given URL is given in the put method, and whatever it has been sent along with the put method will be identifier for that particular URL identifier. Okay, then delete method of HTTP, the server deletes the identified resources from the URL. So these are all require some admin permission. Okay, as a user you cannot do so, but these are all the methods can be used by at least any of the end users. Okay, so options. Server supplies the client with list of methods. It allows to be applied to given URL. Trace, the server sends back the request message. Okay, these are all the methods of HTTP, which is a request reply protocol. Okay, so reply message, what it does is, how it looks like. HTTP 1.1, it is version, status code, reason, headers, and the message body. Message body will have the data which is required. Okay. So next class we'll go through RMIs, remote method invocation. So till now what we have discussed in distributed systems, how this communication is going to, what are the protocols defined. Okay, so that is remote invocation, and remote invocation is this particular task is the task of middleware layers. Okay, to invoke some method which is present in the distant machine. Okay, the client server communication in distributed systems is referred as request reply communication, which is synchronous also sometimes and which is not synchronous. Okay, generally it is built over UDP datagrams. Request reply protocol do work with two primitives, do operation, get request, and send reply. Each of these will have its own prototypes, and which passes the object reference and the method to be invoked. Okay, then this is the request reply message structure. This is how it looks like: message type, ID, object reference, method ID, and arguments. Okay, request reply protocol also has a failure model. What are the failure cases? Omission failure is there, and messages does not guarantee that it is delivered to the sender. Three variations of request reply protocol: the request protocol, request reply protocol, request reply acknowledge protocol. So request protocol is used only when there is a information to be sent to the server, not any reply from the server. RR protocol, both request and reply is there. RRA, which also includes acknowledgement. And there are some examples for request reply protocol. Some like one is HTTP. HTTP is used to, this is to send the request from the client machine, generally from our web browsers, client machine. So this has its own version, YML structure, which is to include the video, audio, and any image type of data. Okay, it has its own methods: get, head, post. It has all of it has its own specific reason to have. A reply message looks something like this: status code, reason, headers. Reason will be okay when the data has been obtained, reasons data. Okay, so any doubts you can ask. So we'll continue in the next class. So go through all the concepts again, because in the beginning of the next class there will be question and answer sessions or forms or any quiz type of questions you should be able to answer. Okay. We'll wind up for the day today.